Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today I have an art journal tutorial for you. The end product I absolutely love, but this one gave me a bit of a fight and you're going to see everything as I left it all in. So I'm working on my Canson mixed media paper. I've taken it out of the coils and I've decided to go with alizarin crimson and purple. I'm watering it down a little bit as you see and just mixing it. Now this is a strange color combination and I think that's why I struggled a little bit with this because what I normally do didn't seem to be working. So I'm mixing this wet on wet, and because it's on a gessoed surface, it can blend more easily than otherwise. Now my paint, the purple paint that I have in there is kind of dried a little bit, so that's causing me some grief. Like I say, this page fought me all the way, but I won in the end. Sometimes it's really helpful to try something completely different, a different color scheme, a different technique, and see where that takes you. I'm adding some gesso in here just to get some variation in tone, mixing with the colors. I just want to get these two colors down here, kind of color blocking and blending. Both of these colors tend to be rather translucent, which I actually use to my benefit later on. I'm just adding more paint as I go just to build up the depth of color that I want. And that's often the case when you have a translucent paint. Adding gesso to that also turns it a little less translucent, more opaque, but then you get a paler version of it as well. Because I seem to have so much paint on here, I decided I'm going to do the plastic wrap technique. The paint had a little bit dried in some spots, so you just take the saran wrap or whatever plastic wrap you have, dollar store works fine, crunch it up, and I let it sit and dry, and I pulled it off. So there are some areas where the paint had dried where that effect didn't really get showcased as much, but it's all going to add texture. Speaking of texture, I decided to do some thick gesso, which I'm spreading on my glass tabletop, and I'm going to take a sink liner and use it as a stamp. Now this is adding wonderful, wonderful, wonderful texture to the background. And of course, here I just couldn't stop. I was having so much fun putting this in. I have lots and lots of texture. Now it's also adding white. And while I like the white, it just, for whatever reason, whatever mood I was in, I just didn't want to go white. I was struggling where to go next. So I grabbed my alizarin crimson and my dioxazine purple, and I'm just applying it over top of the thick gesso. Now you can see how with the gesso, where the gesso is, it's taking the paint differently than the rest of it. This is pushing back the white, but I'm still getting the pattern and I'm still getting the texture that this adds. So don't worry. And again, I'm building up those colors till I get a tone that I like. I'm mixing and blending. So Art journaling and mixed media is all about those layers and those textures, visual texture as well as physical texture. Here I'm just adding more. I want more depth of color. I want some rich color. I guess that was what I was in the mood for. Now I grabbed this stencil, which is quadrifoil reversed. And at first I grabbed Prussian blue, and I'm going to stencil that on just to add another layer of pattern. And while I love the pattern, I'm thinking that the blue is not dark enough. There's not enough contrast. So I grab my black, I reposition my stencil as close as I can, and I'm using black. And I'm loving the look of the black on here. The contrast that that gives is making me happy. And so I decided to put this in 3 different areas on this page. Liking the pattern, looked at my stencils, wasn't sure where to go. I grabbed this stained glass stencil. This is 6-inch, and I will put a link to all the stencils that I use in the description box below. You can get them at all 3 of the affiliate links that are there, so do your shopping and get your best deal. Here I'm using white acrylic paint and putting that over. Now, normally when I do layers of patterns and stencils, I introduce white, and white is always an integral part of that. So that is what I'm going to here. I'm trying to put the white in. Now I realize something as I do this. One, the white is cooling down this page, and I want to keep it warm. So I'm not getting the effect that I want. And 2, I've recently done a page with a very similar composition. And I thought, oh, I should do something different. I try to put some flower focal points in there. No, not going there. So here I go again. I'm just putting a wash of color right on top of that white acrylic paint. Where purple was, I'm putting purple. Where the alizarin crimson was, I'm putting the alizarin crimson. I'm pushing back that pattern. I'm getting rid of that stark white contrast. It's simply not making me happy. Now, I want to say when I first put that and I tried putting the flower focal points in, I then walked away. I took a break. I gave it some time. I took pictures of it. I looked at it and I decided, you know what? I don't like it as it is. So, you know what? I'm going to put a wash on here. Mixing and blending those colors. And I'm liking this a lot more. And I'm thinking, I really liked it when I added the black. So what I'm going to do is introduce more black. After all, it is paper and paint. Worst case scenario, I can gesso over the whole thing. I'll still have all the texture. So this is screen view, and I'm coming in with the black. Now be careful not to get too much paint on your makeup sponge because then it's going to seep under the stencil and maybe give you a look you're not going to like. And with the addition of this, it just makes me happy. Black with the dark colors, the rich colors that I have going here, just seemed to balance the page. And it was like, yes, this is what I wanted. And sometimes when you don't have a set idea of where the page is going, what focal point you're going to use, you're more likely to experiment, which means you may be taking one step forward, two steps back. Don't be afraid to take a risk. I just edged it with black with my makeup sponge, and now I'm just using the float acrylic technique just to edge it with the black, framing the page. Usually I do this with pretty much every page or every project. I'm doing it now because I have the black out. Now I'm loving my background. There are so many interesting layers, so much pattern going on. It needs some sparkle though, so I'm splattering with gold paint. And I admit, I'm splattering with gold because I'm debating whether to do the focal point in gold or pearl. And I really like the yellow on here. It warms it up. So I've decided to do it. Now, these are metal words that I got at the Dollar Tree. I'll look in Amazon and see if I can find something comparable. And I, this will end up being put on some craft project down the road. But until then, I am going to use it as a template to trace. And I'm using my Posca pen. Now, I bought this Posca pen over 2 years ago, and I stopped using them. And you know what? I will start because I discovered that this Posca pen, when it was dry, it was permanent and it gave me a nice dark line. So I have rediscovered this Posca pen. So you will be seeing me using this more. I must say I was impressed. After sitting there for 2 years, it still worked perfectly well. So you can see the word believe, and I'm giving this a quick dry. Then I'm grabbing my fine line applicator bottle. This is filled with Liquitex Basics black acrylic paint that I've thinned. There is no recipe, but I did at the end of this, because I ran this bottle pretty much dry and it was clumping a little bit inside. I will be making a video and releasing a video that shows how I clean it as well as how I fill it. So stay tuned. People have asked for that video, and I thought I'm going to make a separate quick video showing that thing. Now I'm using this one, it's going to be permanent when dry. It's also going to be dimensional, which I wouldn't get if I was just painting it on. So I'm just flooding it and using the tip to fill all the spaces in. Now you have to be careful. There's a lot of paint going on here. You do not want to put your wrist in it or fingers in it. So go slow, dry it as you need to. And no, I do not make you look at the entire process. But I did continue doing it straight through. And if the paint is the right thickness, you should not be forcing your hand. This did not fatigue my hand. And I've had surgery on my hand and it's weaker. I was still able to use this fine line applicator. It is clogging a little bit, so I'm shaking the clump down and using the needle to just push it down and clear it. But I've had that paint in that bottle for a good year. Loving that. So I set this aside to dry. I do not use the heat tool for the full amount. I set it aside to dry, take another break. Now I wanted to add some snowflakes. I thought this is a very odd color combo for Christmas, for the season, but I've been decorating and I wanted to use this flurry stencil. Now I'm choosing gold gesso instead of gold paint. Gold paint tends to be very translucent, which means I would have to put lots of layers to build up that depth of color. But using gesso, it's more opaque and it covers better. Now, the introduction of this yellow gold to this really works well. Yellow is across the color wheel from the purple and that crimson color. And we know that colors that are across the wheel from each other, complementary colors or close complementaries, work really well. They don't, when you mix them, you wouldn't want to mix purple and the yellow, but they work really well. And here we have the shimmer, which just makes this all the more special. I was initially thinking that I was going to use my fine line applicator and outline the word believe in gold. And I chose not to. What do you think? Should I go back and add a lining of gold around the word believe? Or would that be too much gold? Leave your answer in the comment section. If you're not a follower of me on Instagram, please go over to Instagram and follow me at Creative Katie. I'm just looking at these snowflakes, trying to get some variation, trying to put some of them that are the same so that they are cohesive. I want some variation in size, variation in shape. But I absolutely am in love with this page right now. I think these colors would make a beautiful Christmas card. Something just not traditional. I admit I did have my doubts of whether this page would come through at the end. Now, because it's gesso on here, I do stop and spray it with my Murphy's oil soap mixture. It has dish soap and Murphy's oil soap and water, and clean it. Gesso's really hard on stencils, so you want to protect your stencils and keep them fresh. So now we're just taking off the tape. We have this straight edge, and I hope you love this as much as I do. close-ups, here we come.